Family. It's 8 o'clock. Y'all know what time it is. It is time to talk. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you all. First and foremost, as I always do, again, let me give a shout out to my guy, Straight Path Jules. Again, the response when people see it has been tremendous. I appreciate you. Check him out, y'all. Straight Path Jules, spjules.com. Make sure you look him up. Uh, you see the merch, you see the merchandise. It's there. Bright Star Apparel, um, my pure processing, RST automation. As y'all see, the shoes still back there. So always love for Calzura, IMP, everybody that's made this possible. If you don't know about RST automation, definitely look them up. It is the next best thing in your departments. Uh, I use both of their products. I know there's a third, but I have two of the three. I use the Peel Pack system and the AIM uh, table for instrument sets. The productivity is nice. You can't go wrong with, it keeping everything as, the fundamentals, everything that's supposed to be there. It aligns everything so that your efficiency goes up, your productivity goes up. And what can you say? You cannot get wrong with that. Definitely check out RST Automation for some of your departmental needs. Wow. I know that y'all know it's almost that time. It's almost up. But have you cast your vote for the HSPA Board of Directors? Have you cast your vote? This is your chance to stand up and be heard. This is your chance to say, I was represented. I want everybody, please go out and vote. Please get your votes in. That time is now. While we're on that subject, have you registered for conference yet? Do you have your registration, your flight, your room? Are you ready for Vegas? I am ready for Vegas. I got to be there. I'm going to be everywhere, seeing everybody, shaking hands, making networking happen. Are you going to be in the room? Will you be there to say, I experienced the great atmosphere of all of us coming together? I hope so. And the reason I'm always around, Time to Talk, What They Didn't Tell Me, still available. Make sure you get your copy. I will be signing copies at conference. If you don't have one, come find me. I will have some on me as well. But definitely. I always tell y'all this. So I was thinking, right? What can we talk about this week that impacts healthcare as a whole that most people aren't talking about or most people are excited about? And I came to the conclusion that something new, something great that came out that we're not talking a lot about, even though it's very important, was the new ST-108, the water standard that came out not too long ago, blew everybody away. What does it mean for your department? Did you have to do a bunch of changes? Did you have to do any changes? Were you already compliant? What does it mean to be compliant with the water standard? I thought about it. I went back to my own department, saw what we were doing, called a couple of friends, saw what they were doing. And fortunately, yes, we have some very stringent, systems in place and processes in place that allow us to be compliant and to not have to do too many changes to get on the same level as what the standard was saying. But what about those departments that aren't? What about those departments that don't know how to get started? How about the people out there that don't even know what the new water standard was, didn't even hear about it? This show is for you. Y'all know I always said, so I had to look back and say, which one of my friends can I call to talk about this and break it down so that everybody understands what is expected, what needs to be done, and how we can get there. Going through my Rolodex, I was like, hey, I happen to be at a chapter meeting. Shout out to Sarah Cruz. I happened to be at a chapter meeting and I heard this gentleman speak about the standard, becoming compliant, seat at the table, all of these things. And he broke it down in such a way that people left there with a great understanding. There was tons of questions, but he was able to articulate, hey, it's not complicated, but this is what you need to do. So I thought about asking him to come tonight so that he can tell you some of this same information, great information, and get you on that same level. So without further ado, I would like to welcome my friend Rick Dandrow to the set tonight. Rick, what's going on, sir?
Kenneth, how are you? I'm doing great. Thank
Great.
you for having me on.
It's a great day. I'm here to talk water. I heard you speak about this, and the passion that you had in your speech made me think that you were the perfect person to talk to my family about water today.
I am a water geek, I guess you could, or a water nerd. Let's go back to your shout out to Sarah Cruz, right?
Right,
She's the
right.
nerd.
Yes.
I'm the water nerd. So
Okay, we got the CSS nerd. Now we got the water nerd. I like it. I like it a lot.
and it was great meeting you at that Connecticut chapter meeting. She had hosted a great one with a lot of great education, and I was happy to be a part of it. So, and thank you for your compliments. I do try and keep things simple because that's the most important thing. You can read some of these standards and documents, and they can be a little overwhelming when you look
Yes.
at them. And you just got to dig into it and realize that let's get to the basics and let's figure out how to implement and keep it from being complicated.
So, just so I can get the family acclimated to who you are, tell me, how does somebody go? I've done my research. How does somebody go from one of my favorite places, MGM, to Phygenics, to Walt Disney, back to Phygenics?
So
I was reading it and I was like, that is amazing, amazing wave there. So tell the people a little bit about Rick Dandrow, please.
I don't, it's funny. I don't know how I actually got into the role I'm at right now. It's funny how life takes you down different paths.
Right.
But I will tell you, so most of my working career has been involved with facility management and construction management. So
Okay.
I spent nearly 20 years in that field, never in healthcare, but all my time with Phygenics, which has been about 12 years now, I've worked exclusively in healthcare. But facilities are facilities. They're different pieces and parts, but boilers and chillers and how you distribute water and all the things that you do to maintain a facility. There's a lot. There's a lot that's the same, and it transfers over beautifully.
Right.
Oh my gosh! The question you asked was, how did I go from one of your favorite places, MGM Grand? I will tell you that was one of my favorite places to work. I mean, it was a city within a city, but that's how I started to learn a lot about water.
Okay.
And not at that particular facility. I want to make sure I'm clear about that. But in Las Vegas, because of the size and magnitude of these humongous places of entertainment, you as a facility operator have to be mindful of how you're managing water, because water is not like electricity. It's not like natural gas. Those things are relatively stable. Water is not stable. In fact, it arrives at your facility. It's not sterile, right? There's
Right.
guidelines and things that your local municipality have to follow to deliver safe water for exposure and consumption. But if you don't do the right thing, and if you're not fully aware of how water is utilized throughout your facility, you can mismanage it and people can get sick because of the exposure to mismanaged waters. So there was some things that occurred in Las Vegas with people getting sick. In fact, even some fatalities. Now, not at this facility that I was at, but I knew I needed to do something. And at the time I knew what I didn't know. So I actually met the company I now work for, Phygenics.
Okay.
They actually reached out to me. They were in their infancy of a company. We're now in our 20th year. And they talked to me about the importance of doing just this. And I knew, listen, as a facility director, safety is paramount, right? I've got to make sure that the people that come to have a good experience in my facility leave having a great experience. But I also didn't quite know all the ins and outs of all the things that I have to be aware of to manage water. So I had worked directly with Phygenics for about 5 years. Came to a weird crossroads in my career, and they needed someone who was not a microbiologist or a chemist, or they needed someone who understood infrastructures, water treatment equipment, the nuts and bolts of a facility. So they enticed me to join them.
Okay.
So it's been a great ride. You mentioned then Phygenics to Disney to Phygenics. Well, Phygenics is a great company, but I did take a little break just because my family, I have 2 kids, happily married, 2 kids. And I was doing a tremendous amount of traveling, and, it was getting to the point where, my wife and my kids just really didn't know who I was. I was on a plane so often. So we couldn't quite manage that. And a guy that I had worked with and actually helped mentor, he was moving on to a new role. He said, "Hey, I'm leaving. I'd love to get a good replacement. Are you interested to come back directly into the facilities world again?" And it was at the time, I think my wife was threatening me. So I said, I might be interested, so I did leave Phygenics, but I'm back, obviously. Great company.
Right.
I love what they do. I love how they help people in the facilities world. And predominantly we work tremendously in healthcare. So healthcare is probably, I'm going to say it's about 80% of our business as a company. Because healthcare has a very vested interest in making sure that all occupants of their facilities will not be exposed to anything that could create harm, right? I mean, you guys you're in the business of trying to get people home in better shape than when they arrived.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So and like I said, I've exclusively since joining Phygenics have been working in healthcare. And my current role now has evolved into doing nothing but focusing on the sterile processing industry.
Okay.
So I'm kind of the equivalent. I'm kind of your equivalent of a clinical educator. I make sure our teams understand the guidance documents that are out there in the industry so that we know how to apply that information to how we go about doing our business, which is building risk management programs, and they're ongoing programs that manage water. And we support that through data, what we call verification and validation. We have world-class laboratories, so we help with the analysis of the water systems and making sure your different water systems are performing the way you'd expect, so that you're getting good data. But that's something we'll touch on, is there's a little bit of a misconception of what compliance means.
Okay.
Standard 108 and stuff like that. But it's, that's what we do. We're not in the space of selling water treatment equipment. We don't sell the chemistries that you utilize to safely process instrumentation. We're not in the mechanical washing space. So we call ourselves really basically independent. We guide you through these standards, building the programs, and doing it without having some type of connection on another product line that we can push.
Okay, so now I got the people caught up to why you're here to speak on this topic. So for everybody, let's give a brief overview of what is ST108.
Yeah, well, what ST108 is not testing alone. Okay, everybody wants to talk about testing. Okay, and what people need to understand, that just because someone might perform some testing in your department does not mean that you're compliant. Okay, testing is just a small portion of many other things that should occur while following ST108 and getting your department in alignment with that. And the most dynamic, go ahead.
Just for everybody to understand, ST108 was the document that AAMI put out as the new water standard. It's ST108. So when I refer to ST108, that is what I'm referring to, the new AAMI document that came out in reference to the water standard. And that's what he's explaining now. What ST08 entails is not just the testing of the water. There's a lot more into it, and we're going to touch on a lot of it. But just so you're caught up, ST108 is the new AAMI document that revolves around water. So go ahead, Rick. Sorry.
Yeah, and prior to that, Kenneth, was a technical information report, right? A
Yes.
TIR 34. So this standard has replaced that.
Okay.
Obviously went through a much more extensive review and development process because it's ANSI, it's ANSI approved as well. So yeah, it's water for the processing of medical devices. So it is a very focused document on what you should be doing to manage your water systems in sterile processing.
So you mentioned the TIR 34, and now we have ST 108. So what were some of the key changes introduced in the new document from the TIR?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I'm glad you asked it. And I want to make sure, I've kind of, since it's replaced TIR 34, I haven't looked at it in a long time, right? So I've been very focused on this. And now we're working on a new TIR to support ST 108. Okay. But let's not get sidetracked on that. I think one of the two biggest things that occurred in the transition of TIR 34 to ST 108,
Yes.
and I don't know if your audience probably knows a little bit about the normative and informative sections of these documents, right? In
Right.
the informative section, the here's how you can do it or suggestions on how to do things was the discussion of a team and performing a risk analysis. That was not in the normative section. Here's what you should do. Well, that's
Right.
different. Probably the biggest thing now with ST 108. And I think what will be, if people truly embrace this document, the biggest change in the industry, right? Bringing a team together. And what does that mean? A team is, of course, Kenneth, you at your facility, you should be sitting at the table and have a voice.
Right.
Individuals from your OR team, infection prevention, facilities we know has to be there, right? They're the ones that truly know the infrastructure and how water gets to your space. Who else? Biomed or your clinical engineering team might be on that. They might be on that team as well. And I think, and it could be also your water treatment company, right? And it could be your mechanical washing company and your chemical company. And that's important because what I've learned in this industry is, when do all those people come together traditionally in the past? It's when there's
When
a
there's a
problem.
problem.
When there's a problem. Well, how about we get these people coming together first, proactively, and talking about what does success look like for Kenneth in his
Right.
operations? What are my goals? Have a team come together at a regular frequency, and they're going to do other things, right? This is just the first step. And that's the biggest change, is the emphasis on a team and then that team performing a risk analysis. But boy, let's talk about goals and what success looks like for you, not just alignment, but what are the things that are going to be measurable that Kenneth Campbell needs to be able to go back and tell a success story, to higher up to the C-suite and say, this team coming together, getting in alignment with the standard, and these people working together, we've now been able to achieve X, Y, and Z, right?
I heard you say it, and I know a lot of us deal with it. So two parts. Let me go to the first part because you said it just now. How important is it for directors, managers, whatever, have a seat at that table?
How important it is? It's critical. It's absolutely critical that or a designee of your team has to have an opportunity to be at that table along with facilities, with infection prevention, talking about this standard itself. And it's something that I've learned. And gosh, I don't want to get sidetracked, but we'll talk about national maybe when there's an opportunity for me to reflect and do a little plug for the show coming up in Las Vegas. I'd like to do so because it's going to kind of hopefully be a little bit of an inspirational thing, because we got to make sure facilities respects your position at the table, because often they're the ones that may drive some of these programs. They have a very similar program that they should be doing for the entire facility, right? If it's a
Right.
hospital, they should have a water management program that encompasses all water uses throughout that entire facility. That same process is now coming into your space, and they got to allow you to have a voice at the table and be able to talk to the importance of your operations, how some of their decisions impact you.
That's what Harry just said. The same thing you said. Like, yes, coming together proactively. Like, don't wait until there's an issue. Getting to the table. Let's talk about what we can do in advance. I think that is an important part of it. And the second part of that is you said, what about people? And I'll say, in myself included, where the water program goes through a third party. Like, it's not us that do any of the testing. It's not us that do any of the management of it. It's a third party. So convincing them that we still need a seat, even though it's managed by somebody else.
Yeah, but you're still going to play an active role because you have visual observations that you need to be conducting on a daily basis. There might be some things, and that's what's critically important is identifying the roles and responsibilities of everybody at that table. Because not always do you may know there's a third part, but who is that person? What are they actually doing? What's their, what I would call technically, what's their scope of work, right? And understanding that. So that you know who to go to. So you know who to go to when you're having challenges.
I think that's a critical piece that you touch on there, because if you don't know the roles of who's in this risk analysis or on this group, then it's easy to let something fall to the wayside because you don't know who's doing what.
Right. And as you progress through this document, you'll find that those roles and responsibilities and the who is doing what is also important on how do you document what you're doing, right? Because what if you have a healthcare acquired type of incident occur? Documentation becomes really important.
So does the document spell out who's supposed to be doing what or who's supposed to be at this table?
It does give recommendations of what those individuals should do. Kenneth, I mentioned briefly, there's a new TIR being drafted, TIR 119, that's going to be supportive of this new standard. It's going to be more of, I equate it because in our world, there's a standard ASHRAE 188. It was all about Legionellosis and the control of that bacteria in the environment. In fact, that's what really pushed your facility directors in healthcare to have to build a water management program in the hospital. The CDC created something called the toolkit, right? It was kind of the document that tried to simplify and help you if you wanted to try and do this all on your own, gave you a more simplified roadmap on how to execute the standard. That's kind of what this new TIR is going to be. Kind of breaking it down and trying to give more detail and support to the standard.
Okay, I actually have this is like sparking up some ideas and things like that. So I'm gonna ask this question because I feel like facilities who are not involved in this conversation or have this group test together may not even know what they're supposed to be doing. So in that instance, how can healthcare facilities ensure that they become compliant with the standard? That's important. How can they get to a point where they know and what they're supposed to do? How can they ensure the compliance? And I want you to answer that right after this commercial. I know y'all seen it. The AIM tray assembly, the AIM pill pack station. If you're looking to improve on your productivity and efficiency, definitely call them. They said that 24/7, 365 days a year, you can get a hold of somebody when you have an issue. Now that's customer service. You need to check them out. Definitely give them a call for your needs. Right before the commercial, I asked the question because we've been talking about what this new document says, and Rick says that hey, it tells you how to get to the table or bring that team together. And I asked, well, how can healthcare facilities ensure that they're compliant? If we don't even know that what happens in the document or we're not aware of the document, how can we become compliant if we don't know?
Well, you got to get to know the document. So hopefully you guys have access to these things. It breaks down really the steps that any facility should follow, and the professionals that need to come together, what they've got to do. After that team comes together and talks about roles and responsibilities, Kenneth, you asked, and I will tell you, you don't have to have the full complement of individuals that they suggest at the table. And in fact, in some facilities, you have limited resources. So do you have biomedical engineering taking on multiple roles? You may. So they may actually have some responsibilities of what the facility team may traditionally have at another facility. What's important is identifying who does what and at the table itself. The next biggest step, and the thing that I was talking about from TIR to standard, is that risk analysis. That was in the informative section. It's in the normative section now. And
Okay.
what that really asks this team to do is to fully understand how your 3 different water systems get to your points of use, right? We've got critical water, which is, well, some facilities don't even have it. Okay.
Right.
So
Right. I say not everybody has that part. So
not everybody has it. And I've learned that it's not uncommon to find facilities without critical water, but let's just assume you've got all 3: critical water, utility water, which is typically the municipal water that's delivered to your building, and then steam, right? It's just in a different form. It's in a vapor phase, but incredibly important to your operations. You need to understand how that water, how it's treated, right? Is it filtered? What's going on, right? Too many people, and I will say I've walked so many facilities, and I hate to say it, the sterile processing teams rely on that third party or the facility people to manage what they know is some equipment that's in a room somewhere adjacent or on a different floor. Okay. You should know a little bit more about that. You don't have to be the technical expert on it, but you should know more about who's working on it, how it's pulled together, and what's the equation. That's what this team is all about, sharing and teaching that knowledge. But that critical water, where is it produced? How often is it being worked on? How do we know that the guidelines, right? Those IFUs for that equipment, when it comes to the facility side, they might use terms like the OEM guidelines, the original equipment manufacturer, right? Is everything being followed to prove that that equipment's producing the water that you would expect? Same thing with the utility water. Sometimes your hospitals are fully softening all your water, right? Taking out that hardness. They may have whole house filtration. What's going on? You need to understand what's going on that water system as well, and also then with steam. What's happening? Is the steam produced local, right next to your sterilizers through generators, or is it coming from a centralized plant? And what are all those impacts? So you gotta understand that, because then you can start talking about the risks associated with those water systems. Now, this is where it's probably sounding a little scary, but it's not.
I just wanted to throw in this comment. Like the Mott Holiday said, having a voice on the effects of water on surgical instruments is critically important to infection control and patient care. Again, that goes back to what you were just saying. Do you know where your water comes from? Do you know, again, do you have the critical water? Do you have RO water? Do you, these little things? Like I know that I've talked to several different techs across the country that didn't even know if they had these things in their department.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And I'm going to tell you, Kenneth, I've been doing this for building water management programs in healthcare for 12 years. And I'm going to tell you, in the beginning years, the focus was more on viable bacteria. And we would actually be sitting at the table, right? Same team, facilities, infection prevention, Okay, now sterile processing may not have been at the table, but we'd have this
Right.
discussion. All these smart people sitting around the table and they say, well, wait a minute, time, temperature, concentration, there's no way viable, organisms are going to make it through the steam sterilization process. And they risked out, so going back to Lamont's comment, we're now realizing, what's the impacts of endotoxins, right? That's not viable microorganisms, but it's a byproduct of those microorganisms breaking down, right? Those gram-negative bacteria. What does that do to patient care, right, during procedures? Or
Right.
what is staining or pitting or corrosion and the effects of water quality on instruments? What is that doing to your instruments, and what can that do to the patient procedure, right? Could it create irritations or pyrogenic effects and things like that? So
That was actually
we
gonna be
learned there's a lot more to this. It's not about necessarily the viable bacteria. There's a lot of other things with water quality that has an adverse impact on life cycle of your instruments, life cycle of your equipment, but what does it do to your instruments, and how does it have a negative impact on the patient care?
So that was actually the question I was leading into, is that how does these new standards have an effect on the sterilization process? You mentioned steam, you mentioned the critical water from the cleaning side, but does the new standards address all areas for sterile processing? Um, if they don't have, like, say, the critical water, does it address what those next steps would be? What does that affect on sterilization for us?
Well, this is all about the delivery of water to the point of use. Okay. So it doesn't impact your processes.
Sharon,
Um, Sharon said hello. Um, it doesn't change how you do your work. It
okay,
impacts how well you can do your work, right? So that's why this standard is a complete focus on the water characteristics, right? This is a water specification document. This is not like a water treatment design document, all right? It
okay.
has suggestions, but this is all about being able to prove that the water quality characteristics of those three water systems are being met and they're being delivered to where you expect them to be, so that you can do your work properly, so that the efficacy of your chemistries work the right way, and it works to benefit.
So yeah, I think that, like, I guess my point being, so it won't change what we're doing. It just says to ensure that what we're doing is efficient, we should be following these steps.
Correct.
The process itself don't change. It's just, hey, you're gonna get this water from these sources regardless. Let's make sure that, I heard you say, the efficacy of our detergents and all our chemistries and stuff like that, but people don't really think about that part. We get, the water from the washer, we get the water in the sink, and hey, we can do our job in the back. But how effective is the chemistries that you're using if that water that's coming in is not efficiently tested? Which leads to this question: are there any new requirements for monitoring and testing of the water quality under these new standards?
Yeah, there's been some pretty significant changes. Okay, if you were to go to, let's just say, fast forward and you build a program in alignment, right? There's a couple tables that people are going to want to pay attention to.
Okay.
Uh, in the TIR previously, there were suggestions of um, what to test, what expected levels you would want to see or be below. Um, didn't necessarily, and it gave some recommendations of frequencies and stuff, but it was this new standard is very direct. Okay. And in fact, I would say people interpret it to be very prescriptive, but I would caution to take a look, right? Especially, so the two tables under normal operations that people are going to look at is table 5 and table 6. Table 5 talks about how water is generated, right? So what are all those treatment steps? Filtering, RO, DI,
Yes.
ultraviolet lights, right? Those are treatment steps to the point of generation. So when the water goes through all that equipment, what does the water look like at that point, right?
Okay.
And then what is water? What should water look like that's table 6. So that's table 5. Table 6 is what should water quality look like at the points of use, your decontamination sinks, or if you have sample valves close to your instrument washers, what would you collect, measure, and expect to see from your different water sources? But there's a couple sentences just prior to those two tables which are very important, because table 5 and 6 are suggested locations with suggested frequencies that are places where you can get good data and learn about your water systems. But and if you look at that, it might look overwhelming because not everybody has sample valves where these tables would tell you could sample from. And the standard is not telling you at this time that you have to start putting in sample valves, installing things so that you could be 100% in alignment with these couple tables. That's not the purpose. It's about the team making decisions about where can we collect water currently in our systems so that we can start analyzing. And the team should agree that, well, we don't like the results. Maybe we do have to go put in additional sample valves to figure out how to get to where's the problem coming from. You may have to do that, but it's really about get started, right? It does say you shall follow what is being suggested in 5 and 6. But what's important to understand, it also says something about through following on a continuous quality improvement process in alignment with the risk analysis section 5. So that allows the team to really determine, okay, here's where we believe we can get good data that shows that our water is arriving the way we'd expect it to, so that you can be successful in processing the instruments. So that might mean you start with your decontamination sink and you test the utility water and the critical water. And maybe if you're lucky, you can sample your steam condensate at your sterilizers.
You said something important right there, but I don't want to miss Jeremy's comment. Jeremy's asking, is there a direct link to this information? And I know we talked about it earlier about being involved in AAMI and having the information there, but is there another direct link that people can look at to say, hey, am I following these steps? Am I compliant? Or how can I get a hold of this information?
I don't know of any other source other than going to the AAMI website. And right now, I think it's all predominantly electronic purchases. Purchasing the document.
Okay. So, Jeremy, yes, I think going to the AAMI site would probably be the best answer to that question, that you can get the electronic document sent to your facility. Or if you are joining AAMI as an independent, you can get that information for yourself. I know a question that everybody's asking, and you alluded to some of it in that answer previous. Does that involve those samplings that you're talking about? Is that coming from a sterile processing department doing those quantitative samples to test the water? Does that involve more testing on the sterile processing people? And I want to get your thoughts on that right after this commercial. Welcome back. We're here with Rick, and we're definitely talking some good stuff. People are asking the right questions. But the last question was, does it increase the testing, or for people that probably haven't been testing, what does that mean for the sterile processing department as a whole? Is that more testing that we have to do? You know, we do the water test, we're doing the early the washer test and stuff of that nature. Is this a different test to test the water?
Yeah. So there's a couple layers to your question. Who does the testing is really, it's up to the team to determine who will take on the responsibility. And
Okay.
that could be anyone on the team. You know, we facilitate these meetings and we help people. We are a laboratory, so we do have plenty of clientele that say, Phygenics, we want you to conduct this testing. And for the most part, the frequencies are pretty standard.
Okay.
For your critical water system, they're going to look for you to have some analysis to prove that your water's arriving at the point of use and it's being generated in a way that you'd expect in alignment with the standard monthly. Okay. Then for your utility water, hot and cold, that's a quarterly frequency, as well as your steam or more specifically steam condensate is a quarterly test. So it's not a huge burden. Critical water is the most important if you do indeed have it in your facility.
Yes.
But it's data that proves that you've got confirmation that the water's arriving at a quality that you'd expect to support your operations. Okay. Now, who does it? It's really up to the team, right? And I know there's not an abundance of resources in sterile processing to put that burden on them. Facilities would probably say almost the same thing. Hey, I don't have an abundance of people to do it. Your water treatment company that handles that equipment, maybe they can help you with it. Or if you were to work with someone like a Phygenics, and there's other companies out there that do what we do. Of course, not as good, but that's plug. I'm sorry, I got to say that.
Have that one in there.
I'll slide that in there. It's the team has to decide. Again, that all comes down to those roles and responsibilities. But it's important. It really is. You should have data that proves and you can display, because we don't know where this is going yet, right? I mean, I just got word that one of the clients we work with had a Joint Commission inspection, and the Joint Commission pushed heavily on this standard. And yet the Joint Commission hasn't made a strong stand yet on whether they're going to make this part of their EC or their IC type of inspections.
Right.
I'm trying to learn more about hey, Joint Commission, where are you going with this? Because a lot of people ask me that question. But from what I understand, it became a very big focal point during this review that was being conducted. So I hope to learn more in the next few days. Often people hear about that third party that takes care of that critical water treatment equipment, and they hear about them doing some testing, and they believe I must be in alignment and I'm compliant. You got to remember that's only one part. You know, that company is only concerned about, is their equipment performing and delivering the water that you expect on the critical water side. They're not going to do anything though about the utility water side, and they're not going to do anything about the steam condensate side. They're focused on their stuff. So a lot of times people think, hey, that company, I know they test, I know I have a program. Well, that's only one step of many things that you have to do that are simple to do, but you have to display you're doing.
So that note alone, that's probably part of, I guess, going to be a lot of people issue, is that if we're under the impression that the third party or whoever is doing this testing, and as you say, it may just be the critical water, that means that we are deficient in all the other two areas because we don't have that. So for people, and I get what you're saying, monthly, quarterly, and again, that is why having that team is important, because like you said, that'll be determines who does what portions and what parts of this to get that data.
Yeah.
And if you're not at that table, then again, you may not have any of this information if you're not in that conversation to say, I need this information.
Yeah. Kenneth, I can't stress it enough. That team coming together, that is going to be, I think, the biggest shift in this industry, right? Like I said, the only time that team comes together is when you're making a phone call saying, I've got challenges. I'm not sure what they are, but I need help. If you can get people sitting at a table at a regular frequency, with established roles and responsibilities, knowing who's doing what, and establishing goals, measurable, right? Don't just think about alignment with the standard, but how can I have an impact on reduction of my rejection rates in the OR? How can I have a positive impact on repair costs with my instrumentations? Because water can have an impact on that, right? if it's managed the right way? How do I make sure my chemistries are dialed in properly for the cleaning process? Am I overusing chemistries? Am I underusing? Am I using the right chemistry based on the water quality? Right? Because if you don't match up your water quality, like for those people that might be on this call that don't have critical water, I promise you, you're spending extra money, because you probably have to have a different water or a chemistry formulation to accommodate the utility water alone to do your whole process. And that usually doesn't come at a lesser cost. There's usually a premium you're paying. So can you figure out how to measure the benefits of bringing critical, spending that money? How do I get funding to actually purchase equipment that's going to help me in the end? A program like this could literally help you start pulling the pieces together so you can justify why we want to consider bringing in more equipment to produce critical water to help you in your processes.
I know y'all heard it. He said it right there. Just alone in that, establishing a team, finding out if you have all of the parts of the team, finding out if you have all of the components of the water program. And as he stated, if you already know you don't have utility water, then we can this could kind of help you save some money, because if you're using too much chemistry because you're not having the correct water, then you're already doing yourself a disservice. I mean, I know you mentioned it when we first started talking. You talked about the pitting and all of these things that happens to instruments. For sterile processing people who are, seasoned in this, that's a result of the water and stuff like that. But for people who don't know that, that is a byproduct of having the wrong type of water or the wrong type of chemistries. You're getting pitting, you're getting all these other things that are happening during that cleaning process. So again, as he's already stated several times, having a seat at that table, having a seat in that circle to say, hey, this is what I need from a department level. This is how you can help me get to this level from a department level. As he stated again, there have been these conversations happening where sterile processing people weren't involved. How can they make decisions for you not knowing what's happening in your department? And that's just a tidbit for the leaders out there. If you're not in these conversations, he's given us some great information tonight. If you're not in these conversations, how do you know that what is happening in your department is the right thing, or what's not happening in your department? That's where this conversation comes from. And I know we talked about the TIR, you talked about the ST-108, just so people understand what that going from a TIR to a ST document itself. How did this standard compared to from the TIR to the ST-108? How does the standard itself compare in terms of the stringency and effectiveness that we were seeing from one to the other?
It's not drastically different, Kenneth. I mean, it's structured and the normative and informative sections between the TIR and the standard, all the same content was kind of there. It's been restructured. It's been restructured. So now that in the normative side, that portion that says, Kenneth, you should be doing this. It's in black and white, and it spells it out. And it talks about the team. It talks about understanding your systems and performing a risk analysis. It talks about how are you going to go about regular monitoring of the water systems? How do you get confirmation that the water is truly in alignment with the standards? The good thing, if you follow this, not only should you get greater outcomes, less rejections and stuff like that, but here's the deal. When there is a challenge, hopefully you have enough, the program's built and you have data that the whole team can go back to and say, well, wait a minute. We used to think that maybe this was water or steam causing the problem, but the data we have, the regular data that we have and that's available to us, would indicate that it's not. And now you can shift your time and your energy and your resources to what's creating this challenge. And again, I'm speaking hypothetically. I don't know what that challenge is, but is it because at your pre-treatment up in the ORs, is that a challenge? Are they not treating your instruments the right way? How long is it sitting in your holding space prior to it actually being worked on? There's a lot of, listen, your industry, what I've learned is there's so many things that need to go right in order for you to produce a safe instrument for, for reuse in patient care.
Now, I think you hit on two key points in that. A lot of people read these documents and we get caught up on the word should and shall. When you say it should be doing this and you shall do this, in terms of just that normative, informative section, what is the one thing that sticks out to you as a shall?
Well, it's what everybody wants to go and talk about, and that's testing.
Okay.
There is a shall statement prior to tables 5 and 6 for the routine testing. So the answer is, if you haven't been testing before, you're not going to have much of an excuse for not gathering data about what your water systems look like. You're going to have to do something. What's important to understand is that when you look at those couple tables that I've been discussing, table 5 and 6,
yes,
which is normal operations, please understand that when you look at it, it talks about the type of testing, how often you're going to test, and the suggested locations. You as a team can determine if those suggested locations are appropriate. Okay. And I've done some presentations, Kenneth, and I can't remember the one, if I had a slide. I think I always include it. It might have been on the one that you saw. If you do the literal application of those tables to your department, you're going to come up with a number of tests that may not be manageable. It's just going to seem like a lot.
Right.
So the team can really determine, okay, where are the really important locations that are going to give me good feedback? So I have a reassurance that I am getting the right water so that I can do my job properly. And you do have that ability. The team just has to, in your program, you just got to write. We as a team believe that locations A, B, and C are the most appropriate at this time to give me information that will routinely tell me if my water is being delivered as I would expect so that I can be successful. If it doesn't, if the results come back and they're not what you'd expect, well, then the team probably has to agree. We may have to test more in depth and at other locations to see what's going on. Why am I not getting the water that I would expect from my critical water and my utility water at the points of use? And that's the most important. I will tell anybody, if I'm guiding people building a program, where water meets the instrument, right, at the point of use, start with that, right? There's table 5 and it talks about points of generation. And I think there's some importance to that. But when it really comes down to it, water doesn't improve the further it travels in pipes. It typically always degrades. So if your water looks good at the point of use, you know that it's good at the point of generation, right? It doesn't improve. Doesn't improve from the point of generation to the point of use. It usually degrades.
Right.
So start there. But the biggest shall comment is about testing. Listen, we as an industry, we have to know what's being delivered because that water is critical and it's very important to your success. So have data that routinely tells you that I am getting the water quality that I would expect. And it's of water quality that also, depending on the use, right? Critical water wants you to know about bacteria levels and endotoxin levels.
Right.
So there's some microbiological aspects of this too, where, you just want that data, that confirmation that it is arriving where my team is working. And I know that it's appropriate and it's going to be in the best condition to support the success of processing that instrument.
Y'all heard it. I mean, that shall, we talk about it all the time when we say should and shall. And in this particular instance, the shall is around the testing because he's right. If it's good at the point of use, is it still good at the point of generation? Yes. That's just the way that works. But how would you know that if you're not testing? How would you know what kind of water you have in your decon area? What kind of steam is coming through? These monthly testing, quarterly testing, these are important steps of your program. And I think when I talked to him one time before, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but the important part is having a program, having a team that you have a team of people together that can say, we are doing ABC. Like he just said, Joint Commission's already focused on it. Are you going to be compliant when they come to your facility? If this is one of the things that they're asking already. And like I said, this document just came out last year, correct?
It was August of 2023.
So from August to now, it's already on their radars. So are you going to be compliant when your time comes if this is the questions that they're leading to already? And like you said, where are they headed with it? We don't know the answer to that yet. We know that we have to get something in place to say that we're doing the right things and providing the best service to our patients. All right, Rick, I do have one question that I want to ask, and I give you a chance to think about it. For people who aren't involved, for people who want to be involved, explain a little bit how they can find, the groups on AAMI and what that importance is of them being a part of even that conversation. And I'm going to ask you to answer that right after we come back for this last commercial.
Scrub Ball is all about celebrating healthcare. If you're in the healthcare field, no matter where you work, we celebrate you.
Y'all see that? Get your Scrub Ball tickets as well. If you've never attended, this is the year you should go. It's going to be a great time. Again, if you haven't ever heard about Scrub Ball, please go to scrubball.org and read up on it. It's all about honoring people who wear scrubs, not just saying sterile processing, but if you're a healthcare person and you know somebody who has touched your life or any life of patients in around just an extraordinary way, please recommend them for an award. This is for you, Scrub Ball 2024. I can't say enough about it. Rick, as we leave the people today, I do ask a lot of people this question. How important is them being involved in AAMI? And if they are involved, how can they get involved with this water document? If they're not involved, how can they get involved?
Well, I would say this, there's still time. So right now I am part of, I had mentioned this AAMI group that's now writing this TIR. And I'm going to, in the private chat, I'm going to put in my email that maybe you can show on the banner quick. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, I am one of the subcommittee chairs writing a portion of that document. And we are definitely looking to have the user group represented. And I will say we've got a pretty good contingency of people from the sterile processing industry as a part of this. And that's important. You have to have a voice and you have to have an opportunity to influence how these documents are crafted and how they ultimately get published into the industry itself. So send me a note and I will see what I can do to forward off your information. And there's still time because we are going into the spring meeting with AAMI coming up here in 2 weeks.
Yes.
It's going to be the team still continuing to work together. The subcommittees meet on a monthly basis, and we don't plan on submitting the draft to AAMI until the fall meeting, which I think is in September sometime. So there's still time to get engaged. So send me a message. We want the user community there. We have to. There's a lot of professionals from other industries that are participating, but the user group has to be represented, Kenneth. And it's been a really fun process thus far.
There you have it. He gave you the email. Please reach out to him if you want to be involved in the water process in general. But more importantly, reach out if you need help getting involved with AAMI. As he stated, it's that end user that we need in these rooms to help drive these conversations. We're the ones who do the work, the front line, the end user, however you want to describe it, they need that input. And like I said, it's still time to get involved. Like they're just creating this new document, TIR 119. And it's going to be forthcoming. Like I said, we're not going to even submit it for this session. It won't be into the fall session. So you have time to get involved. So please reach out to him. Or if you're a facility that needs some guidance on how to set up your water program or just want to ask some questions, again, Phygenics, reach out to Rick and his team and let them come do that assessment. Let them get involved and help you get to that next level. And again, it's not an endorsement. What I'm saying is, as he said, there are groups out there that do it. Phygenics, definitely one of the top people that I've seen in the industry doing it. So reach out there and
get. If you have questions, I am kind of like the equivalent of your clinical educators on the teams. I love answering questions. I like helping people. This is a great industry. I've really enjoyed working at. Kenneth, can I put in a plug for National?
Go ahead.
Listen, you're encouraging your audience to get signed up and get out there, and I'm pleased this year, and I think it's kind of important, and I'm excited about this. So I'll be the first general session on that Monday morning. So big audience, the big stage, and I'm happy to bring, because I have learned with working with all of you professionals in the sterile processing industry that sometimes maybe you don't feel like you do have as strong a voice as you should sitting at that table when it comes to maybe facilities, right?
Right.
So I'm going to be presenting with Gordon Howey. He is your partner organization, ASHE, right? The American Society of Healthcare Engineers. He's the immediate past president, so he's been at the high levels and the advisory board. He's going to be presenting, and I'm hoping, and you're going to hear a message where he's really going to encourage how, one, it was incredibly important for him because he's doing what this standard says he should be doing. But
right.
You're going to hear from him. He couldn't have done it without you guys being at the table. So hopefully you're going to hear that welcoming, message that you guys have to participate. Okay. And hopefully he's going to give you some advice that if you feel like you're being met with some resistance, how do you break down those walls and barriers also? So we're going to use standard 108 as a talking point, but because it's so team focused, we're going to hopefully also have a message that inspires that audience of how do you, if you feel like there's a little bit of a wall between you and maybe facilities, how do you break that down so that you can be successful in implementing this, because this will help you be more successful in your roles if you know you're managing your water the right way. Water is absolutely critical to your success.
Hey, you heard it here, folks. At the end of the day, Las Vegas, he will be on the stage that Monday general session. We get to hear this live with the help of ASHRAE. They're going to go into details on how we can actually improve what we've already started. And if you haven't started, you have him in person to talk to get some more tips. And again, if you haven't got your tickets and stuff yet, please register. Please get your flights, get your hotel. Las Vegas, HSPA. Rick is going to be live in the building, so we get to do this all over again and get to have some good conversations.
I'll be back in my old neighborhood.
I love it. I love it. Family, it's been us here. Time to talk. Rick Dandrow, Phygenics. Loved every minute, sir. I appreciate you coming through tonight and telling the family about this new document and about the water. Hopefully you do get some questions, or people got the email address and they can reach out to you and definitely ask some questions, because this was a snippet of what is there, but hopefully it got people thinking enough to actually send you the right type of questions that they really need the answers to for their facilities. And even if you're just a tech in that facility and you want to have more questions, please reach out to Rick so he can get you in the right direction. Please sign up for AAMI if you haven't. He's also a resource for that. Family, as always, I appreciate you being here. Rick, thank you, sir, for showing up tonight and showing us how we can become more involved in the process in our facilities. I actually, like I said, took some of your advice, and I now know what that team looks like. So it does work when you have the right information. You needed the information to know where to go, where to start. This was part of that. Rick, I appreciate you, sir. Thank you for coming. Family, as always, next Thursday, 8 o'clock, same time. Let's talk about it. This was Time to Talk. We'll see you soon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kenneth. I appreciate it.